Hey, good morning, folks. I hope you're having a great start to your day. It is Monday, and I've got a busy day ahead. I'm getting my allergy shots. I'm gonna take a hair dryer, which I don't use on my own, to get a little bit of wallpaper border off of a foyer in our church. That's my job for the day. So I'm gonna get shot and then use the hair dryer. So I mean, hey, short bald guys, we don't get a lot of chances to do both those things. So that's it. And I've got to start today with a joke. I know we used to do, dad joke Mondays. I have heard a joke that is so horrible, so ridiculous, that you're going to groan for an entire month, okay? I guarantee months of groaning, a month at least, okay? Are you ready? Here we go. I have a friend. He and his wife went to Spain for an incredible vacation. Ended up in a really small town, middle of nowhere, nice beaches and things, away from all the hub and the grub of life, you know. And well, they're in this little hotel, middle of nowhere, and at night, middle of night, my friend's wife gets very, very sick. I mean, deathly ill. And so he's very nervous. He runs down to the front desk and he says, "Hey, my wife is very, very sick, very, very ill, and I need. Is there a local hospital? Is there any doctors nearby?" And the lady said, "Hey, sir, don't worry because we, as a hotel, we have our own physician." And he's like, "What?" She says, "Yes, we have our own physician, so don't worry, don't worry." And so she picked up the phone, and next thing you know, this doctor's in the room helping his wife, and gives her some medicine, and gets her all packed down, and the next day she's fine, wakes up, feeling great. So on the way out the way out, they're leaving, and he goes down to this hotel. There, remember they're in Spain, and he says, "Hey, how much do I owe you for that doctor's visit?" And she said, "Don't worry, it's included in the bill." And he got the bill, and he was just absolutely amazed because there wasn't some huge overcharge surcharge, and he was just absolutely flabbergasted that he'd gotten this doctor to show up at the hotel in the middle of the night. And he said, "Ma'am, I am just so impressed. I am so impressed by the fact that we're here in the middle of Spain and you've got a doctor in house." And she said, "Well, sir, no one ever expects the Spanish in physician." Oh, isn't that horrible? Isn't that just great? I mean, I heard that and I laughed and I laughed and I laughed. And if you're still not getting it, give it a few minutes, let it sit in, study some history on the Spanish Inquisition, and you might. But I heard that joke and I laughed and I laughed. I woke up early this morning thinking about that joke and I thought I got to tell that joke. So let's get to the news since, and I think everybody's still so numb for Mondays. You're just like, what was that? What was that? Maybe you'll get more of it later on. All right. Zero Hedge had an article, and it's called "If This Isn't Treason, What Is?" Newly released revealed internal memo from the final days of the Biden administration exposes a calculated scheme to grant de facto amnesty to more than 3 million foreign nationals through temporary protected status expansions explicitly designed to block President Trump from carrying out mass deportations the American people voted for. This is treason. This is ridiculous. That's not even as funny as the joke I just told, but the whole thing comes down to this was a planned invasion of the country. And the people in power knew what they were doing. Uh, we found out about Fauci's little diary. And some of the memes about Fauci right now it's worth going on X just to see all the memes about Fauci. But his newly released COVID diaries reveal bizarre fixation on fame as pandemic deaths mounted. That's a Fox News article. Here's the point. He was all caught up in how famous he was becoming in light of the fact people were dying because of these shots. We're dying because of how it was manufactured, and dying because this was a worldwide agenda. And I still to this day do not understand how some of these things got by with. Now I understand everybody passed everybody's bat in Washington D.C., but I pray for the day when justice comes out, when these people stand before God, and have to give an account, and they won't be able to do anything about it. Have to give an account to God for why they killed millions of people on purpose and with full blown intentions. All right, another article out of Zero Hedge, and I'm gonna stop with this one. The United Nations has run out of alibi. An alibi is something you put out there to keep you from being discovered for committing the crime. And I've discovered, and this comes from a lifetime of watching the TV series Cops. The guy who's not wearing a shirt is the one that did it. That's all you need to know. And if you watch Cops, everybody on here that's watched Cops, you know I tell the truth. That's it. And the most important thing I ever learned from Cops, especially in southern states and the Midwest during the summer, if the guy's not wearing a shirt, that's the guy that did it. If there's a guy hiding the trash can not wearing a shirt, that's the guy that did it. So anyway, let me read this article. Institutions built to prevent atrocities eventually face the question of what they actually protect. For the United Nations, I've got a deck of cards in my office called the United Nations of Weasels, and it fits. For the United Nations, voting patterns, internal investigations, and its own decisions this year no longer support the fiction of neutrality. These guys haven't been neutral since they were founded. An UNRWA school in Gaza sat above a Hamas tunnel shaft and three anti tank positions, and its own principal was on the payroll of both institutions at once. A fact that American investigators and not the UN brought to light. These people are delusional and intentional and are a bunch of sorry criminals. That's all I got to say. And I know people are, well, you're look, there are agencies that are supposed to help. And yet we've seen fraud. UN's been fraudulent with the nations for decades. NATO has been fraudulent with nations for decades. Large, vast agencies and units of our government have been fraudulent for decades. But this is pathetic. They're trying to, the UN ends up protecting terrorists and terrorist groups and terrorist resources. And I don't really have patience with terrorists who surround themselves with babies and daycare kids and hospitals so that we won't bomb them. But nonetheless, this is the world in which we live. A crazy world. A crazy world. And it's important that we deal with them. I said I wasn't going to do this, but actually, Fox News had an article, Longer Lives, Worse Health. Scientists uncover troubling trend across generations. It's a Fox News article. People across the world are living longer, but they're also spending more years coping with ill health, a recent study observed. The morbidity gap, not to be confused with the Durian gap. The number of years people spend in poor health, typically struggling with chronic challenges such as low back pain, hearing loss, and depression, widened across 203 of 204 countries analyzed and was the most pronounced in America, the researchers found. Globally in 2023, an average of 14.5% of life was spent in poor health compared to 13.6 in 1990. And those numbers may not seem very, very much, but when you take that overall of the population from 204 countries, it is. We're not getting, so basically the article says that people are spending the last years of life in terrible situations and conditions, and we got to do something about that. That means we take care of what we do, how we live, how we eat. So much happening, so much going on. I will talk about the prayer event at the end of the broadcast today. I've got to get a drink. I'm sorry. All right, here we go. 2 Chronicles chapter 7. I'm going to read verses 7 through 10 today. Solomon's built the temple, dedicated the temple. Fire gods come down, taken up the sacrifices. He's dedicated this thing. He's offered a huge amount of animals to be slaughtered. And it says, and Solomon consecrated the middle of the court that was before the house of the Lord. For there he offered the burnt offering and the fat of the peace offering, because the bronze altar Solomon had made could not hold the burnt offering and the grain offering and the fat. Let's talk about something here real quick. First of all, it says Solomon consecrated the middle of the court. He set this outdoor area apart. He basically kind of dedicated and said, okay, we're going to use this part for more sacrifices, for more burnt offerings. We're gonna heighten what we've got. We're gonna build an annex, so to speak, to the temple, and we're gonna do all these things out here. But he consecrated it. In other words, he said, God, how can I do all of these animals? How can we do the sacrifices? How can we make sure all these things are working the way that they're supposed to work? What do I need to do to accomplish this? And so he was governed, he basically consecrated, he set that area apart. He told the priests and the people, hey, this is going to become a holy place. I've consecrated my home. I've consecrated my office and the church, not just at the church, but at and the church. Um, I walked around that building. I prayed over the property. I'm asking God, but I've consecrated. I've set it apart so that what happens there gives God the glory and the honor and the praise. And Solomon did that. They were offering an incredible amount of sacrifices, and I can't imagine the mess and the blood and the smells. Um, there was up near where my aunt Betty used to live. There was a gentleman that owned a slaughterhouse, and my aunt worked there, and she would walk from her house to the slaughterhouse to work, and then she would come home. And there were several times I would be up there with my brother. We'd ride our bikes up there, and my aunt Betty would walk by, and you could just there was a smell about my aunt at that time because she'd been around slaughter. She'd been around animals, dead, alive, blood, all and the mess and the cutting. And so when she showed up, it was like, ooh, ooh. You just knew that she'd been around something like that. And so I can't imagine those priests and what they must have had to deal with and tolerate with all these sacrifices and how messy it was. And let's face it, our lives as Christians can get really, really messy and frustrating and difficult. So let's keep reading. At that time, Solomon held the feast for 7 days, and all Israel with him, a very great assembly, from Lebo Hamath to the brook of Egypt. And on the 8th day, they held a solemn assembly. So they had this huge, big feast. 7 days, a week. Seven is the number of completion. On the seventh day, God rested. The week was over. Or the week was done. And they had this huge feast. And look, if the government decides to, I'm not talking about food stamps and welfare and Medicare and Medicaid. If the government decides they're going to put on a 7 day feast and and you're eating high on the hog, that just meant the better pork was towards the top of the pig. And of course, the Jewish people would not have eaten that. But the whole point is they had 7 days of celebration. They turned this into a feast week of celebration for who God was and what God had done there in the people. Solomon was excited, and the people are excited because the temple is built. The Ark of the Covenant is there, and so we need to understand that this is an exciting time. And then they held a solemn assembly, and a solemn assembly was a time set aside to deal with their lives. They've done celebration they dedicated the temple, they built the temple, dedicated the temple, made the slaughter, set the animals up, and now they're blessing God, they're thanking Him, they're celebrating together and with each other. And now he says, Solemn Assembly, we're going to focus our prayers on getting our lives right with God. We're going to get back to the Word. We're going to focus on what God wants us to do. I mean, everything was fresh and new. It's kind of like when a new restaurant goes in. Everybody gets excited and ready and waiting. And then, the first couple of months, you can tell. It's like you walk in. I can walk into a hotel or business and think, okay, newer building, probably maybe a couple years old, maybe 6 months old. But after time, things begin to wear and tear. And after time and days, all of us begin to wear and tear too. It says, they held a solemn assembly, for they had kept the dedication of the altar 7 days and the feast 7 days. And on the 23rd day of the seventh month, he sent the people away to their homes, joyful and glad of heart, for the prosperity that the Lord had granted to David and to Solomon and to Israel, his people. Never, ever forget to thank God for what he's done for you. Never, ever, ever forget to give him praise in remembrance. You know, when Moses wrote the books of the Pentateuch, Numbers and Deuteronomy are historical reminders of the mistakes they'd made when they were a bunch of knuckleheads doing dumb things and when they were doing the right things and following God. And you got to look back and remember when God brought you through. I shared the story yesterday in the Sunday morning service, the $747.32 check. That will stand out in my life as one of the most incredible things I ever saw as a young Bible college student when God showed me, I know what you need and I'm going to make sure you get it. That was just an incredible thing to me. And I still, when things get tight, when things get tough, I'm like, Lord, you told Mary Reed to write that check in the middle of the night. And she did. They're, they're, everybody's going to go home and leave. And eventually, you got to leave church on Sunday mornings. You know, there's a whole lot of people that have tried to convince me at times in my life that they live on the mountain continuously and nothing bad ever happens and the rain is only always just a mist, and if they walk underneath the trees, no birds ever do anything on their hair, on their shoulders, but the leaves come down and kiss the side of their face, and everything's just fine and dandy. Well, you know what, my life ain't like that. And I've had people tell me that they're, you know, that nothing bad ever happens to them. And I think, what's God doing in your life then? Because I have found that difficult things, challenges, the things that make you go, oh God, where are you? Those are the things that strive, those are the things that shape your life and help you. And so when I meet people who they live on the mountain all the time, you can't live on the mountain all the time. And even Moses had to come down after some time. And when he came down, he was glowing. He was glowing. He was glowing to the point that people are like, cover your face up because your holiness reminds us that we're not. So cover that up. Cover that up. I mean, these are the people that were making the golden calf and dancing all around it, you know. And it was his brother that kind of said, hey, let's just do this. And Moses is gone, you know. Big brother's up there, but let's do this. You just never know. But David sends the people, or Solomon sends the people home. And they're going home to their real lives and their real worlds. And they're trying to figure things out. They're just trying to figure things out. And so, stay on the mountain as long as you can. But realize you can't live on the mountain. Most of us live in the valley, so to speak. And look, you all know I have nothing to do with health and wealth and blame it, grab it, blab it, grab it, whatever. I have nothing to do with word of faith. I'm not a word of faith guy. I've seen a lot of people torn up because of that doctrine. And I've seen people die years and decades earlier in life because they were just convinced that God was going to take care of this and take care of that. And God doesn't allow people to get sick. Yes, he does. Ask Job. Ask Jonah. Ask Paul, you know. So often, so many times, we just forget to remember. If I put those two, I guess that could be an oxymoron. Don't forget to remember. Uh, don't ever forget to remember what God's done in your life and where He's brought you from, and how He's heard, how He's led you and guided you through all of those difficult times in your life and all those stages. Um, I mean, there are normal stages we go through in life, from infancy to toddlerhood, elementary to middle school, high school to college to, you know, married and kids, and we start getting older, and things start shifting a little bit. But one of the most important things, one of the most important things that you and I can do is keep track of the things that God has done. And then share those testimonies. Share with people what He's done. Let people know how God's worked in your life. So anytime I talk to somebody who's just struggling financially, I mean really struggling financially, I always tell them about that situation with that check for $747.32. I'll never forget that number. I, I've told the story so much that I think if I make it to like 117 or 20 years old, and they put little probes on my head to read my mind, they're going to see that number 74732. What's that? And it's going to be there. And I remind myself many, 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 many times, many times, folks, let God work in your life like He wants to work. Let Him work in your life like He wants to work. My Aunt Betty, I see some of you talking about her, uh, was my mom's sister. And my mom and my Aunt Betty uh, were like twins almost. My Uncle Cyril, the uncle I talk about with a sense of humor, he died in the early 80s. And my mom really kind of hung on to my aunt. My aunt stayed by herself. Uh, got remarried to another guy. He passed away not long after they got married. But there was uh, there was um, situation. We had just gotten to, I'd been hired at Burkesville in October, and I was going back and forth. I was going down on Saturdays and spending the night, and then preaching Sunday morning, Sunday night, and then driving home. And in November of 2010, I was driving on my way home, and the pastor that I'd worked with as a youth pastor for 10 years, and when my mom and my aunt went to church, Pastor Bush, Sam Bush, called me and said, Pastor Dan, listen, you just need to know, I don't know where you are, but your mom and your aunt were just hit by a car, by a truck. They were crossing the street from church to go to the parking lot, and a distracted driver hit them with a truck. My mom was knocked about 30 feet, and she was in her mid 80s at that time. Um, she My Aunt Betty was flown further and against the curb. My aunt died about 3 days later in the hospital. My Aunt Betty, and that was a hard thing because I had to go back and do a funeral. I was when I got the call. I was only about an hour away from the hospital where they were at, though. They ended up flying my aunt out about 20 minutes after I got there. I got to see her, pray with her. It was a very, very difficult baptism and going, moving to Kentucky and having the church there and stuff. But that happened in 2010, and the guy got some jail time out of it. Um, but my mom ended up moving into my aunt's house. My aunt had left that for her in a will, and but nonetheless, that was a hard time for me, a hard time for my family. But my mom, who was just a trooper and who made it to 91, uh, got hit by a truck in 2010, and so it was just really really that was just a hard thing. But you go on, you live on, and from time to time, I ran into the guy that did that one time, and I talked with him. I told him, I said, "Hey, look, I forgive you." He cried, he wept like a baby for just a little bit in front of me. I could see the sorrow was genuine, but and that situation took my aunt's life, almost killed my mom. So those are, there's other things. There's things that happen in our lives we don't even think about to talk about. There's no reason for me to tell that story. But my Aunt Betty loved me and my brother, and did a lot. Who did a lot for us, and really, really took time to love us and care about us, babysit for me and Micah, or me and my brother Darren, and then my mom and my aunt they babysat my kids. When I was all the a lot, a lot, a lot, and my kids really took that, my Aunt Betty being killed, hard. They really took that hard, and I saw God work through it. You know, I saw God work through it. My Aunt Betty did have a couple dreams about me when I was a kid, and all ministry related. Um, um, it's quite a heritage there. My aunt was one of the ones that took me to church when I was a kid and a teenager when my mom couldn't and my dad wouldn't. So I got some great family. Had some great family. Still have some great family. Uh, but grateful for them. So, folks, take the time to remember where you came from, and take the time to remember what God has done for you in your life. All right, Father, I want to thank you family. I want to thank you for the people you put in my life along the way. For an aunt that used to drive me to church on Wednesday nights, and otherwise I wouldn't have been able to go. Well, I want to thank you for the mom that stayed by my brother and my side for decades, loved us in spite of what was going on at home. Thank you for sisters that loved you, poured into my life. Thank you for a brother, Lord, who came to know you in the years before he had a heart attack at 48 and died. I thank you for a dad that came to you after decades and decades of alcoholism. You can't wait to see him there one day. Lord, I ask you to honor yourself in our lives. And that means we listen, we pay attention, we do the things you've called us to do. We speak, we listen, we hear, and we accomplish your plan and your purpose for our lives and for our worlds. Lord in heaven, let your will be done. Let your will be done in our lives today so that we can honor you with our lifestyle, with our lives, with our words, with our actions, with everything inside of us, God. May we do the right things. May we be sensitive to what we watch, what we see, what we do, what we hear, what we say, how we live today, Lord. Let everything we say and do bring glory and honor to your name every day. Lord, thank you that Solomon did what he did. Thank you for the dedication. Thank you for the fire that came down. Thank you, Lord, that there were years when those folks in Israel, they knew how they had to live. And I pray for the nation of Israel today. I know many of them are lost and don't know you, but God, I pray that there will be there will be a revival of your Holy Spirit among the Jewish people. And I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. God, I pray that you would get a hold of the leadership in Israel, from Netanyahu down to all the parties, to all the things that are going on. Lord, Israel is going to play a huge role in end times, and we already see it there. And so, God, give those folks wisdom, help them to find you. I pray that you would double, triple, quadruple the amount of Messianic Jewish people, not just in America, but around the world, and especially in Israel, that they would come to that saving knowledge of who Jesus is. Because, Lord, they need you. They need you. So bless, Lord, as only you can. Bless, Lord, as only you can. And let your will be done, I pray. In Jesus' name. Amen and amen. He's faithful, folks, and ever more will be. Hey, tomorrow we're going to get to that very, very famous and well known, very, very recognized passage of 2 Chronicles 7:14. And going to look at that in the context of our lives and our day. Um, a lot going on. A lot going on. So, if I can have you folks pray about something for me, um, I have a situation with some tax documents that I've got to refile, not refile. Um, I've got 2 years of my Social Security statement that shows no income. And I'm going to do a walk in tomorrow because I can't get an appointment for 2.5 months to get in to see someone in the Social Security office. But for some reason, my Social Security has not been monitored or taken care of. It shows 2 years of no income, and so I've got my tax documents, I've got my W-2s, and I'm going to go and knock on the door, so to speak. But if you can just pray that I can get some favor and I can get in quickly tomorrow. I got to do that tomorrow morning after the live. Um, but it's bothersome because it will impact if Social Security's still left and I've paid into it. It's my money, it's your money, that you pay into it. But it already shows a significant decrease in what I would get because of those 2 years of no income. And this has happened several times to me now. And if you can just pray that I get favor, and I'm just going to go, I'm a walk in, folks. I need to get in because there's no appointments. And I'm sure there's 500 other people that'll be in Frankfurt tomorrow for that. And yes, the prayer event. The prayer event Saturday, Friday night, if you happen to be in town, I've got a doctor's appointment in Lexington from 2:30 to 4:30. I'm doing the training for my new pump that I should get in about 2 or 3 weeks, okay? I'll be at the church around 6. And so if you're in town Friday night, come on over, 1375 Harrodsburg Road in Lawrenceburg, and we'll just hang out in the sanctuary, hang out in the multi-purpose room fellowship hall. I don't really have a food situation. There's not really a place here where you can take a big group of people and keep together. So show up Friday night around 6 o'clock or so, and if you're hungry, bring something to eat with you. And we'll watch you eat, and maybe give some tips on how to eat better or faster. I don't know about that. But and then Saturday morning, doors open at 8 o'clock. We're gonna have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Alexis Lambert food tour is going to be here, and she's got this really cool plan of how, any of those, how it's all going to work. It will be good food, good fellowship. We'll start praying at 10 o'clock. We'll break for lunch, which is the first time we're doing this. The last couple of years, I've had Jennifer bring me food, and I've just kind of eaten real quick while we're kind of doing different things. And I thought, we're going to break for lunch and fellowship. At the end of the day, Alexis is going to be taking care of us with a dinner, and so you don't have to run off and grab something to eat. You can stick around, and those that are able to that are able to stay for Sunday morning service, it'd be great to have you folks come and be a part of that. And then we'll see how it goes with this August setting. I want to plan it so as many people that can come as possible. And I realize nobody's calendar is always going to work with everything going on, and you've all got lives and kids and grandkids and jobs and this and that, and ice cream from Sonic to buy. Um, so we're going to be having a good time this week, though. I mean, a good time. So Friday night around 6 o'clock, if you're in town, come on over to church, and I can kind of show you everything. We'll be set to go for Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Doors will open, and we'll let you in, and we'll fellowship and talk. And once again, there'll be breakfast. Hot breakfast. It's not just like, we're not going to go down and get some Lucky Charms and some Rice Krispies and make you eat that. It'll be good stuff. Good stuff. So anyway, um, Saturday, this is going to be a great weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing so many of your faces that I haven't seen for a while. And it seems like once or twice a year we have that prayer event reunion. And I love this group. I love the fellowship that we have. And it's good. It's good. So, folks, have a great rest of the day, and I will see you live tomorrow. The other thing I want to share is I'm going to try one more time this week to do a recording for Thursday. Um, and I'm going to set to where the earliest you can set a recording to go live or to be accessible is 5 a.m. And I've done that the last several weeks. But some of you folks said you didn't even find it until like noon o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more recording this week. And if it doesn't work, starting next week, what I'll do is I'll just get up about an hour earlier and I'll record from 6 o'clock to 6:30, and then I will put that on there. I'll do a lot. I'll just go live at 6 o'clock to 6:30, and then if you want to sleep for another half hour an hour and a half and watch it, that's fine. We'll figure it out. But the technical difficulties with Thursday, I have no idea what's causing it. Nobody does. We'll blame the gremlins in the system or demons in the sky. But we're going to get it taken care of. So, folks, have a great rest of your day, all right? We'll see you.